Love that you mentioned Missouri because they're a name that has come up quite a bit when talking about these quarterbacks. Obviously a need there with Bo Pribula entering the transfer portal. Somebody that they've potentially been connected to, per our Matt Zenitz, DJ Lagway. Baylor, Louisville, Virginia, again, Mizzou have been a school that's attached to him. Chris, when you're looking at the interest level in DJ Lagway, he's an interesting guy because he's somebody that's a five-star coming out of high school. And Coop, you've said this numerous times, I'm sure you will continue to today, which is the projection versus the production. That's all projection there, Chris. What are you hearing as the interest level in DJ Lagway?
I think teams are very interested in DJ Lagway, but it's with a bit of a caveat. You know what I mean? Like
cautious about it. You know, well, can we fix him is the big question.
It's that, and also like what he can do to a room. And like, I'm not saying that in a negative way. Cooper could probably speak better than me. But this is a conversation I had with somebody about DJ specifically yesterday. It's like DJ Lagway is a huge name. Yeah. Like he is a presence in the space. Like he is a potential first-round draft pick. Talent-wise, and when you recruit a player like that, when you openly recruit a player like that, it can mess up your quarterback room. Like you can scare somebody in the portal. And I do think that kind of has an effect on DJ where he's coming off a season where he didn't have his best stuff. Like teams view him as like maybe a slight bit of risk, although the upside is there. And then you also add in like the factor that he's DJ Lagway. It's a complicated one, which is why I think, and I mean, I've heard the same schools, like Virginia's come up a lot with me for DJ Lagway. Baylor, and I think there's some other schools looming kind of in the background as other decisions get made. But it's just kind of a weird spot for him. I think he's going to find a great fit. I think there's a lot of schools out there that really believe in DJ Lagway. Like I've been covering DJ Lagway for a long time. I'm very bullish on his future.
Texas,
yeah, and I just think it was a weird year for DJ, and with the way the market is right now, it's just kind of a weird spot for him because he's not first on like the bigger teams board, but he could come up, but you just have to be careful to manage it.
Yeah, obviously a new head coach there, and reportedly conversations didn't go well with John Summerall and his staff. So the breakup could be good for both sides, essentially. But Coop, this is somebody that you very recently watched in high school, and there was a reason that you put him as one of the top arms in the class. And so what is it that you've seen from him now that he's entered college? He led FBS in interceptions this season, but was dealing with injuries, I think, to every limb that you can. So what's his projection moving forward now?
I think that has a lot to do with it, right? Like, does he have a clean bill of health? Is the durability a long-term concern? Were these things between the shoulder and dealing with the calf strain or these things that could potentially pop up in the future? And then, in terms of the context of the situation, I think he put a lot of pressure on himself. I mean, this is a guy that was on Gatorade commercials heading into the season after the season that he had as a freshman, where he was 6-1, and he looked like he was going to be the franchise cornerstone and potentially save Billy Napier's job. That didn't happen. That didn't come together. And I think this was a season that certainly got away from him. And you mentioned the turnovers. I thought at times he was just pressing, and that was a lot of it, quite honestly. So I think for him, he's one of those guys, when you look at the market, it's the math equation of there are a lot of teams out there. There are a lot of buyers out there. And these are teams that expect to contend for a national championship. And although the supply is high with the names that we have mentioned, if a Levitt goes to Kentucky or a Mestamaker to Oklahoma State, like I previously mentioned, then who's out there, right? That would leave a Sorsby, that would leave a Lagway, that would leave a Raiola as really kind of the top three brand consensus names out there, which if Brendan Sorsby, for example, let's just walk through this hypothetically, decides that he's going to go to Texas Tech after the first visit and shut it down. Sam Levitt decides that he's going to go to UK, and Dante Moore declares for the NFL draft. Then what's that going to look like? Some team is going to have to reach on a prospect that they were not overly convicted in. And that's when you're hearing the schools like Baylor and Virginia right now at this point, Missouri. In a couple of days from now, that could be LSU. That could be Oregon. That could be Miami. To me, if I'm DJ Lagway, I'm sitting in his corner, I'm saying, wait it out. Okay, because those teams that are keeping you warm right now, you're going to be their first option here in no less than a week.
And I will say, like, I mean, DJ's heard from some of these schools, like LSU. Like, there's been some dialogue. Like, I mean, Lane Kiffin is very aware of DJ Lagway, as we saw.
Some retweets.
Yeah. Like, they're online. You know what I mean? And
a little bit.
DJ was DJ had a pretty significant part of his recruitment that was tied to LSU for a time too. So there's a comfort there, and I can think of a couple other bigger schools that have been in contact with DJ. And I think for him, it's just kind of a matter of what you find to be the most important thing. I don't think money is a factor for DJ this time around. To be honest, like, he got paid a lot of money to be at Florida. I think it's fit, and I'll be curious what he views as the best fit. I mean, you could argue a place like Virginia makes a ton of sense for DJ Lagway with what Tony Elliott did this year and what Virginia did. You could argue the same thing about a Missouri or a couple of his other options. Baylor's home for him and his dad, who played there. So he's in an interesting spot where he's going to have some decisions to make, and how quickly he wants to go will determine how the market goes for him, I think.
So he was the number 1 quarterback in the 2024 class, the number 2 quarterback in the 2024 class, Dylan Raiola. I could continually go down the list, but let's talk about Raiola to start. How do you evaluate him in college?
Yeah, he's interesting because in a lot of ways I've had conversations with people that have also spent a lot of time evaluating him, and I've wondered, it's like, has he ever moved out of the category of the guy that he is to the guy that we thought he would be? And what I mean by that is that we know he's an above average to good starter. He was completing almost 72% of his passes before he got injured. That was top 5 national. That was a Nebraska school record. But in terms of elevating the talent around him, is this a guy that's a true needle mover, and a guy that I kind of compare him to? And I'm not saying this in a negative way, because this is kind of how I see him comparable, would be more like Carson Beck. If you put him in an environment like Miami or an environment like Oregon, where you surround him with the type of playmakers and the type of offensive line and the type of running game that those programs provide, then Dylan Raiola becomes a lot more of a net positive, rather than being the guy, the analogy I always use, having to be Superman versus having to be Clark Kent, right? But has the capability of stepping up and delivering when his name is called. And I think that's where Dylan Raiola is, but he's got to find the right situation. I mean, going back to high school, this was a guy that transferred every year of his high school career, dating back to his freshman year. Nebraska, even given the success that they were having, they were 6-3 before he got hurt, decided to go a different way. And it wasn't like this amicable breakup by any means, stretch of imagination. I think this was one of those situations where Matt Rule, Nebraska, were ready to move on from Dylan Raiola. So similar to DJ Lagway, but also different. He needs to figure out his value system and what's important to him. Is that quarterback development? Is that playing on the biggest stage of college football? Is that developing into a number 1 draft pick? Because he's got the talent that a lot of NFL teams are going to be intrigued with, just in terms of the arm talent and the way that he plays the game. But this needs to be a strict business decision for him. And he needs to go to an environment that I think is going to be tough on him and challenge him to be the best version of himself. And I think that's a good thing. Everywhere he's been in his career, he's been the cherry on top. He needs to be the compliment, right? And I think a place like Miami or Oregon would really be an ideal fit for him. But at this point, I'm kind of curious to see what the market looks like.
What does it look like early on day 1?
Well, I can only tell you what I know, and what I know is people in Dylan Raiola's camp would like him to be at Oregon. Whether that's a realistic possibility, we'll see. Like, Dante Moore has a decision to make. Oregon has a decision about what their portal board would look like if they decided to go that direction at quarterback. So just know that as a school, at least on my end. And again, I don't hear everything out there in the world. I hear a lot, but I don't hear everything. That's the school that's continued to come up with me with Dylan Raiola. And he's a little bit like DJ Lagway, not the same, but there's questions about him. Like, he was a 5-star quarterback. Cooper mentioned it all. He was kind of the dude his whole life, and things didn't go 100% the way he probably would have wanted this year. And I know Cooper said, like, it was Nebraska choosing to move on, but I think there was some unhappiness in Dylan Raiola's camp as well about kind of season and the team around him a little bit. It just had to give both of those situations. And I know Nebraska didn't mind taking $3.5 million off the books because he was one of the highest paid quarterbacks in college football last year. So it's one of those, it was a breakup that I think made sense for both sides. And now Dylan Raiola has to figure out what's next in his career and how he can take that step. Because if you talk to people around him, his goal has always been to compete for championships. Nebraska wasn't getting there, and some of that blame certainly belongs on Dylan Raiola as well. But I think that's the opportunity he'd like to have. Like where he ends up, we'll see.